Good afternoon, Boston. I'm sorry, it's not raining right now. I need a better response than that. Good afternoon, Boston. Beloved, esteemed Boston community, thank you so much for joining us here today as we commemorate the 60th anniversary of the 1965 Freedom Rally. The theme of the day today and the theme of the next 365 days will be moving forward together. And you'll hear a lot more about that as we go throughout our program this afternoon. My name is Tevin Wooten, and I'm a broadcast meteorologist here at NBC 10 Boston, and I'm going to be your host for the day today. Thank you so much for having me. This is an absolute privilege and an honor to be a part of. When I spoke to Embrace and Dr. Jeffries and Jess earlier this week, they said, Tevin, we're going to give you two roles. Your first role is to be the host and guide you through this afternoon. The second role as the meteorologist was going to be to keep the rainfall away. And I think, overall, I've done a pretty decent job. You know, I heard one of the dignitaries earlier walk up and say, at least it ain't snow. Am I right? Can I get an amen on that one? Before we begin, I would like to thank our more than 100 partners that came today together to ensure that this event is successful and given the recognition and the due that it deserves. Not only in this amazing, esteemed, outstanding city of Boston, but also for our great nation. We're going to hear more from all of our amazing leaders today who responded to the call to support, to volunteer, to feed, to provide transportation, to provide and create a safe space for all of us to gather and come here today. We also want to give a special recognition to Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. That's right. To also Lieutenant Governor Kent Driscoll, who's in the house today. I like your shoes, by the way, Lieutenant Governor. To Boston Mayors Michelle Wu. To Massachusetts Senator Liz Miranda. Chief Sagan Idaho. And any other elected officials that we have in the House today, not only on the stage, but if you're down below on the field, we also want you to wave or recognize yourself. Any senators, any representatives, city council women and men. Also our amazing city workers for the city of Boston. Any educators who are in the crowd today. And also our first responders as well. We want to thank you all for being here. A special recognition and shout out to Dr. Michael Curry, Shapley Brooks, Rashawn Hall, Karen Kenyatta Russell, Dr. Lee Pelton, Dr. Amari Paris Jeffries, and Martin Luther King III as well. I think that deserves a little bit louder of a recognition. That's a lot better. I'd also like to give a heartfelt acknowledgement to the 1965 Freedom Plaza heroes who are seated here today and their descendants as well. We know that today would not be possible without all of their hard work, their dedication, their persistence, and let me tell you, they went through a lot worse than a little bit of rainfall, am I right? Finally, we'd also like to give a shout out to Pro Bono ASL for providing sign language interpreters. New England Audio, making sure that you could hear us loud and clearly. Thistle Communications, making sure that you could see us on both sides of the stage today. And my home, NBC 10 Boston. Now, earlier I mentioned that today would be about moving forward together, and we'll go throughout the program, but I just want to make sure all of you are awake and alert and, dried off from the rainfall. So when I say moving forward, you say together. We got it? Let's practice really quickly. Moving forward. Yeah. Boston, we are moving forward. Yeah. Boston, we are moving this country forward. Yeah. Boston, we are moving this world forward. Oh, I like the sound of this already. There is a long list of people who are speaking here today, but hold tight, stay focused, sit tight, because there is an even longer list of injustices that need to be addressed. We are gathered here today to commemorate the 1965 Freedom March that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., along with Miss Ruth Batson, Reverend Virgil Wood, Dr. Ralph Abernathy, Mr. Alan Gardner, and many other community organizers dared to lead in 1965 in protest of the injustices in education and in housing and racial discrimination. Today, we unfortunately continue to witness federal governments turning a blind eye to the hatred and racism that still persists in our country. The very injustices that Dr. King himself and many of our elders marched against, systems that still deny equitable access to quality education, affordable housing, and basic human dignity. Unfortunately, we see policies that strip away civil rights protections, roll back environmental safeguards that disproportionately impact Black and brown communities today right here in Boston. And also the criminalization of those who dare to speak truth to power. And just as our elders did, we choose to gather. We choose to speak out and to resist. We are here not only to remember, but to reignite. We are here not only to remember, but to reignite that flame of justice. It is all of our collective responsibility to keep building together. To start us off in the spirit of our ancestors, I am pleased to introduce two incredibly talented musicians that I had the privilege of hearing during soundtrack, sing Lift Every Voice and Sing, Boston's own Zakiya Sutton with Jesse Tate on piano. Following that performance, we'll hear from Reverend Willie Bodrick II of 12th Baptist Church, which was the home church, the Boston home church rather, of Dr. Martin Luther King himself. Zakiya.
Hello, beautiful people. My name is Zakiya. I have the honor of being accompanied by the lovely Jesse Tate. You can't see him, but he's in the back, making beautiful sounds, or will be making beautiful sounds. Thank you for coming out in this weather and showing that the rain do not stop the revolution. Okay? And if you happen to know this, feel free to join in.
Victory. 70 years ago, on a day much like today, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., alongside the Southern Christian Leadership Conference Boston chapter, gathered freedom fighters, young and old, near and far, to march in solidarity from the heart of Roxbury to the Boston Common. They marched to birth a new vision for our city and our nation, a vision conceived in freedom and dedicated to the radical proposition that all Bostonians should live in the beloved community, where equitable housing and quality education would not be the privilege of a few, but a promise for all. They marched with hope in their hearts and justice on their minds. They marched not just for themselves, but for generations unborn, generations like us standing here today. And yet, 60 years later, we must ask ourselves, can such a vision survive in a time such as this? When the truth is on trial, when justice gasps for air on life support, when democracy teeters on the edge of collapse, eroding right before our eyes, when the same demons of racial injustice, housing inequality, educational disparity, and economic exploitation still stalk our streets. And today, that same fire that compelled our ancestors burn within us today. We gather now on this sacred ground, hallowed with blood, sweat, and tears of those who dared to believe in freedom. And we honor their footsteps. We honor their prayers. We honor their fight. And we honor their faith. And it falls upon us in this critical hour to pick up the unfinished work that was begun here some 60 years ago. To walk in their footsteps, but also to blaze new trails as we continue to walk towards a just future for all of us. And so today, God, we invoke your presence and power, not just to commemorate, but also to activate. We come to pray not with idle words, but with marching feet. We come to worship not only with lifted hands, but with lifted voices. We come to declare enough is enough, and we shall overcome. For I see a vision, a country not driven by greed, but guided by grace. A country not ruled by fear, but restored by faith. A country where Dr. King's dream is no longer deferred, but finally delivered. A country where freedom is not for the privileged few, but a divine right to us all. So God, today let us rise up. Rise up until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like an everlasting stream. Rise up until every child in every neighborhood knows their worth and their value. Rise up until we transform chaos into community, hatred into hope, despair into determination. Rise up until America becomes what it said it would be on paper. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So on this day, we come to tell America that we stand for something. We come to tell America that we will not forget, that we will forge forward, and we pray in the prayers of our ancestors. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far along the way, thou who hast by thy might lead us into the light and keep us forever in the path we pray. Amen. Amen. Amen.
How am I supposed to follow that? Reverend Bodrick II, thank you so much. Your words have grounded us. Your words of unity, your words of grace have reminded us why we are here today. Thank you for blessing this space as we continue to move forward. Let's show our appreciation one more time for Reverend Broderick II. It is my honor to introduce our first speaker of the afternoon, Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll, who has been a trailblazer in terms of her leadership, who made history in 2022 as part of Massachusetts' first all-woman executive team. That's right, with a distinguished tenure, by the way, if you weren't familiar, as Salem's first woman mayor. She brings a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience and a steadfast commitment to building a more equitable and inclusive Commonwealth. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, no. You can do better than that. Reverend Broderick got you fired up. Good afternoon, everyone. It is so great to be here. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this 60th anniversary. And thank you, Reverend Broderick, for those inspirational words. Really, you are a tough act to follow because we believe in what you're saying and you are giving us the energy that we need. The sun may not be shining, but you demanded that we get into this, and we are, so let's do it. I'm so pleased to be here with Representative Ayanna Pressley, with Mayor Wu, with so many members of our community. I know Senator Markey would be here, but he is at the Pope's services, or he would be on this stage as well, to celebrate 60 years ago, Dr. Martin Luther King, marching on the streets of Boston in the name of equality. He made it across the Common to the People's House, just up the hill, where he stood on the pulpit in the House chambers. It was there that he challenged Massachusetts lawmakers to be better, to fight against discrimination and for social justice. Here in Massachusetts, we are the state of revolutionaries, where progress has always been part of our DNA. We're the state where the sin of slavery was first ended. We're two brave people named Elizabeth Freeman and Quock Walker, sued for their own freedom under the terms of our brand new state constitution. Where Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth came to live in freedom and start their movements. Where W.E.B. Du Bois was born and raised and helped found the first chartered branch of the NAACP right here in Boston. And in my hometown, Charlotte Fortin, the first black graduate of Salem State University and the first black teacher in our Salem public schools, integrated at their time. And as you know, we are the state where Dr. King and Coretta Scott King lived, learned, and grew into the world-changing civil rights leaders we know them to be, right here in our Commonwealth. But at this time, we all know we're living through a moment when the progress they fought for, they sacrificed for, and they won is under attack. So Dr. King's message to Boston 60 years ago is as relevant today as it was then. And it's for all those people who fought long and hard for our nation's progress that we must recommit ourselves to defend freedom and justice once again. As Coretta Scott King said, freedom is never really won. You have to earn it and win it in every generation. Well, we're ready to do our part. We owe it to all those who came before us and to those who gathered here on this Common in 1965 to stand up and speak out against injustice, as we have always done. We owe it to the generations who come after us. When they look back at this moment, will they know that we did all we could to protect and advance their freedom? Looking out to all of you here today, I'm assured we will meet this moment and do so together. While we still have work to do, we haven't always been perfect, Lord knows that. But as I stand here today and reflect on Dr. King's words while he spoke to the legislature all those years ago, may I say, I still have faith in America, and I still have a deep belief that we will solve this problem. I have no despair about the future, he said. We will overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Those famous words right here in the Massachusetts State House still guide us today. And as we leave here this afternoon, let us remember those words and remind ourselves that this is our moment to overcome, and that ultimately the power doesn't rest with the person who lives in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The power rests with us, the people of this Commonwealth and of this country. 60 years ago, they stood here and stood up. This country 250 years ago normal, average, everyday people stood up and decided to risk life and limb in search of self-governance, in search of democracy and fundamental freedoms. They fought like heck against the greatest military empire known at their time. The least we can do is fight to protect it and preserve it, and it will start here in Boston, just the way it did 250 years ago.
Excuse me, let's show Lieutenant Governor how much we appreciate her leadership and her commitment on being here today. One more round of applause for your Lieutenant Governor, Kim Driscoll. Our next speaker is a Massachusetts state senator and a proud Roxbury native. Is Roxbury in the house today? Is Roxbury in the house today? There we go. There we go. A proud Roxbury native and the first Cape Verdean American elected to Massachusetts State Senate. Representing the 2nd Suffolk District, she brings decades of grassroots leadership to Beacon Hill, championing racial justice, maternal health equity, and community-driven policy reform. Give it up for Senator Liz Miranda.
I heard some Deltas in the house. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is State Senator Liz Miranda, and I have the honor of serving Black Boston in the Massachusetts Senate. It is powerful to be here today on the Boston Common, the same ground where 60 years ago, over 20,000 people gathered with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Ruth Batson, Alan Gartner, Reverend Virgil Woods, and Dr. Ralph Abernathy to demand justice in our schools, in our neighborhoods, and in our lives 60 years ago today. So we're not just honoring their legacy, we're actually carrying it forward. As we stand here today, we are embodied by the spirit of Dr. King to embrace the meaning of collective action and collective prosperity. Beloved community, especially during these challenging times that makes us confront the integrity of our democracy and the systems around us. In the midst of this stampede of news, an influx of panic, leaning on our neighbors and finding solace within our families and friends are actually required. In seeking the resilience, the strength and motivation we're gonna need to enact the change we deserve. After all, the love of our people in our communities is what's gonna carry us, our own aspirations to push for a better future. The 60s marked a significant time of growth in the city of Boston, in both social change as well as urban growth that opened our city to more diversity. But it also exposed problematic signs of injustice. When Dr. King first came into this city to receive his doctorate at Boston University, to strengthen his theological passion, he also became an active member of the 12th Baptist Church in Roxbury. Okay? You heard from that pastor. Y'all ain't never been to a sermon, y'all need to pull up. That's where he laid his groundwork for his advocacy roots into our community. And in turn, developed strategies embedded to the success of the civil rights movement. Through his guidance, he led the crowd to discuss the quiet aggressors of racism in our area, predominantly in issues of education inequality, and redlining and housing discrimination. His words at the 1963 March for Freedom left a stain in Boston that has never left us, but rather pushed us to combat all signs of inequity. However, what history often forgets to emphasize is the other 22,000 individuals that stood in the crowd with him, believing in the same principle and mission to unite together and to fight for change. Without you, our collective power wanes. So today, you join us to rally forward and remember and respect the ancestors who led this work in our past. But tomorrow, we continue to embrace the lessons we know of our past to fight for a more just and a more equitable future. There is no shortage of plans and policy proposals that could do this. But to turn those bright ideas into real change, we'll need something more than elected officials who agree. We need a commitment from all of us that we will lead, that we alone will not take on the burden of change, but share it with our neighbors. To take on this debt and invest in reversing the decades of harm. Housing and education and equity are very much still with us today. We still see it in housing policies that price out working class Black families from the neighborhoods we actually built. Our grandparents and great-grandparents laid the bricks, cared for the homes, built the churches, they filled the schools, but now luxury developments rise where public housing once stood. And families who've been here for generations are being displaced by market forces and policies that favor developers over stability. When we say housing is a human right, we mean it. And until every family, regardless of their income or background, can live and grow in safety and dignity, we haven't done enough. We still see it in our schools as a proud Boston Public Schools graduate, where opportunity is distributed not just by talent or determination, but often by zip code. Today, a child's access to art classes, AP courses, or a guidance counselor often depends on whether they live in West Roxbury or Mattapan. And we can't forget that in Boston, resistance to integration had a name, Louise Day Hicks. She embodied the implicit but powerful force of obstruction, claiming that inequality didn't exist even though it played out right in front of our eyes. There are many Louis Day Hicks figures actually elected today. They're not in Boston though, right? There are those who seek to stall our progress, quietly and politely, but we must not repeat that history by pretending that today's disparities are actually accidental. They're the result of decisions, and we must make better ones. Democratic maintenance, that's right. This idea that democracy requires active care and stewardship and sometimes protest is what actually brings us here today. We are here because community must and will win over chaos. Let me say that one more time. Community must and will win over chaos. Because the love we have for each other is stronger than any attempt that will divide us. Because our ancestors marched so that we could organize, so that we could legislate, and we could fight. And now it is our turn. We must recommit ourselves to the vision of the beloved community that Dr. King lived and died for. A community that doesn't just survive hardship, but flourishes in resistance, flourishes in joy, and in the strength of our unity. Thank you.
Roxbury, this is how you're raising them. Thank you one more time to State Senator Liz Miranda, not only for your leadership, but your homegrown leadership and your commitment to justice for this city and this Commonwealth. Please welcome our next fierce champion for justice, equity, and the first Black woman elected to Congress from Massachusetts. Representing the 7th District, bringing a powerful voice for equity, justice, and community empowerment to every space she enters. And I must say personally, as a communicator, seeing the way that this next speaker chooses her words so wisely, so eloquently, and she chooses her words with intent. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Congresswoman, your Congresswoman, Ayanna Pressley.
Well, good afternoon. What an honor it is to be here with you all today as we gather in the spirit of sacred remembrance, righteous resistance, and radical hope. And let me begin by extending my heartfelt gratitude to Embrace Boston and its visionary leader, Dr. Amari Parrish Jeffries, the entire Embrace team for their relentless commitment to truth-telling and justice-seeking. All of my partners in government, for which I'm grateful that you stand in the gap every day. And a special and heartfelt thank you to Martin Luther King III. It is an extraordinary honor to stand in your presence. I'm grateful to you, to Andrea and Yolanda. You are a living bridge between generations of struggle, sacrifice, and perseverance, and a steward of your father's towering legacy. We are deeply grateful for the wisdom, dignity, and moral clarity you continue to bring to the ongoing fight for justice and liberation. And now to all of you, I'm thankful for every elder, every organizer, every agitator, every faith leader, every freedom fighter, every justice seeker who arrives at this moment today, because indeed in this moment, the work of peaceful protest and of democracy is in and of itself an act of courage. In this moment, dissenting and truth-telling in this moment are in and of themselves a courageous act. In this moment, exercising freedoms, free speech, and those things that should be birth and constitutional rights are in and of themselves a courageous act. They are a courageous act because there are forces at work that are anti-woke because they want you to be asleep. Dr. King challenged us to remain awake in the midst of a great revolution. Come on now. They want you to be asleep because they want you to be ignorant and uninformed. Come on now. They want you to be asleep because they want you to be indifferent to your own injustices and that of your neighbor. There are forces at work that want you to be inactive. They want you to be ignorant, indifferent, and inactive. And so the fact that you are here today is a courageous and radical act. Today we commemorate the 1965 Freedom March and Rally, a moment in our shared history that was both historic and pivotal in the fight for educational equity, where people 20,000 strong assembled on this common. Thousands of our elders and ancestors marching from Roxbury to Boylston, Charles. They walked and marched with dignity and determination, carrying on their shoulders the weight of generations and holding in their hearts the fierce hope of a more just future. It was raining that day too. Today we come together in remembrance and in recommitment, and we take stock to affirm this historic moment when forces are working every day to erase our history. But we affirm and celebrate Boston's history, American history, Black Boston history. They marched to demand civil rights and human dignity. They marched for the right to vote, for access to quality jobs and affordable housing, and for an end to the racial violence and economic exploitation that defined their daily lives. Their actions were not only a cry for justice, but a bold declaration that Black lives matter. Those courageous marchers knew what we still know today, that power concedes nothing without demand, that justice is not simply given freely. Justice is earned through struggle, through organizing, through agitating, through collective action and resolve. We can stand here today because of the sacrifices and leadership of local civil rights giants. Many of them are with us here today. These leaders did not pursue justice for accolades, for attention, or for likes on social media. They did it because they believed deeply in the transformative power of community and in the potential of a multiracial democracy rooted in equity and compassion. As we honor their legacy, we acknowledge that the work they began remains unfinished. The same forces they fought racism, poverty, and injustice continue to shape the lives of far too many people in our communities today. We are living through perilous times. Across the country, we are witnessing, this is the season to call a thing, so I'm going to say, of witnessing a dangerous resurgence of white supremacy, of state-sanctioned violence, of economic exploitation, of authoritarian rhetoric. Occupant Trump means to make America Jim Crow again. But let me be clear, I carry the lessons and the love of our ancestors with me into every room that I enter. None of us here are new to this, we're true to this. As marginalized people, our whole lives we have had to litigate, legislate, and agitate for those things that are a birthright for the majority. So we were built for this. We're fighting for justice, for dignity, and for policies that center the people, because the movement for black liberation, for economic justice, for a multiracial democracy did not end in 1965. This movement is still alive in 2025 because Jim Crow is still alive. As Dr. King said, the work of segregation is another form of enslavement, just shrouded in different niceties and complexities. So they may call it by different names, but we are still in the civil rights movement. Jim Crow is still alive when they are right now seeking to resegregate our schools, workplaces, and communities. Jim Crow is still alive when they are legislating voter suppression. Jim Crow is still alive when they deny constitutional rights. Jim Crow is still alive when they will brutalize, imprison, intimidate you to silence you. Jim Crow is still alive when the Supreme Court has been enlisted as co-conspirators in this extremist march and has gutted affirmative action. So we must recommit ourselves. This is not just a commemoration, it is a continuation. This is not just a remembrance, it is a recommittal to the ongoing march for justice, for housing, for education, for health care, for environmental rights, for reproductive rights, for public safety, for true economic opportunity. All of these struggles are connected. Each of them is a thread in the fabric of black liberation and our collective liberation. And we must approach this work with the same courage, discipline, and stamina that our elders and ancestors brought to the streets in 1965. Let us not allow this commemoration to remain solely in our memory. Let it live in our movement, in our organizing, our advocacy, our legislation, and our votes. Let it live in the ways that we show up for one another, in the policies we fight for, and in the justice that we demand. We are the successors to a powerful legacy. And with that inheritance comes responsibility. The work is not finished. The fight is not over. The march is far from complete. We are still in the civil rights movement. This is not a fight for the next 4 years. This is a fight for the next 100 years. And it is going to require all of us. We are the ones our ancestors dreamed of, and it is now our sacred duty to keep marching. And marching right alongside me and my colleagues in this work every day is the mayor of the city of Boston, who has the honor of representing the city where Martin and Coretta fell in love, recognizing that before there was Montgomery, there was Boston. Before there was Atlanta, there was Boston. We are grateful to our mayor for her work on the front lines, and we now bring her to the podium, our mayor, Michelle Wu.
The baby hand up. Another round of applause, please, for our Congresswoman, Ayanna Pressley. So I want to say one more word about Ayanna, because I had the chance to go to DC last month, take your constituent to work day with the congressman in the 7th district. And you might have seen a little bit on TV of the hearing that I took part in. The congresspeople and representatives were in and out of that room. They got 5 minutes in front of the camera. They did their best to throw what they could throw at Boston. We batted it back. But then they left the room. But there was one member of Congress, my congresswoman, stayed in that hearing room for 6 hours with us, watching over us the entire time. She had my back, but she has Boston's back every single day, and I'm so honored to serve alongside you. Thank you. Good afternoon to all, and welcome to Boston. I want to thank Mr. Martin Luther King III, the entire King family, Embrace Boston, the 1965 Freedom Rally Commemoration Coalition, all the heroes whose names grace the 1965 Freedom Plaza and their families, and all of our community partners here today joining us to commemorate and to commit to the work that democracy demands. As we celebrate Dr. King and the civil rights leaders who stood and marched alongside him, we also celebrate Boston. We celebrate Boston's entire Black community and all the allies for never failing to show up and put in the work. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Last week here in Boston, we kicked off the celebration of our city's role in igniting the American Revolution, 250 years since the events that kicked off our democracy. We celebrated a local Bostonian, Paul Revere, son of an immigrant, Boston Public Schools graduate, who got on a horse and rode through these streets carrying a message, a choice, between stepping aside to let tyranny in or fighting to defend a freedom we hadn't even met yet. But we stand here today for the same reason that Dr. King stood here in this very spot 6 decades ago. In that choice to say the truth that in 1775 our city and our nation started a fight we still haven't finished. In 1775, the freedom that Bostonians dreamed of and fought for was incomplete and imperfect. Dr. King saw clearly what we know today, that freedom for some is not freedom at all. That freedom, like faith, like justice, like truth, either is or it isn't. There is no in-between. Freedom is absolute, inclusive, and whole. It encompasses both freedom from and freedom to. Freedom from intimidation and fear, from harm, from hate, from the lonely island of poverty and the iron feet of oppression. And also, freedom to learn, to choose, to be joyful and excellent. And let's be specific. For Black mothers and Black babies, it means freedom from health inequity and maternal and infant mortality. For Black children, it means freedom to be children. Freedom from the racism that paints Black boys as Black men. For Black students, it means freedom from the lie that you don't belong, and freedom to learn the full truth of our history. For Black business owners and workers, it means freedom of opportunity and access to capital. For Black immigrants and Black members of the LGBTQ+ community, it means freedom from fear that your Blackness will become just another part of yourself used against you. For every Black resident, it means freedom to be Black and alive, freedom to be Black and to thrive, freedom to be joyful, freedom to be excellent, freedom for all. In Boston, we are continuing the fight. Freedom for all residents here to walk down the street knowing you live in the safest major city in the country with much more work to do, but in the safest major city in the country because it is safe for everyone. It means the freedom to come home to a place of your own, to build generational wealth through home ownership opportunities, freedom to raise a family, to get the best public education, freedom from fear for your kids and their kids, because we're investing in climate solutions that will keep our city safe and livable for generations to come. Boston represents freedom for all. Freedom uninterrupted, absolute, inclusive, and whole.
Let's give it up one more time for Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. Mayor Wu, we want to thank you for your commitment and your entire administration for making Boston a city that truly belongs to everyone. And if you didn't know, as Mayor Wu just mentioned, next year marks the nation's 250th anniversary. Embrace Boston, alongside our 100 partners, many of them who are here today, will lead our city in a radically inclusive celebration of Boston's history through Everyone 250. See what we did there? Today's rally is an official pre-event to Everyone 250, and we thank the City of Boston for partnering with Embrace Boston on this historic moment in this endeavor as we collectively reflect on where we've been and how we can move forward. How we can move forward. How we can move forward. That's a lot better. Our next speaker is Dr. Michael Curry. Dr. Michael Curry is the president and CEO of the Massachusetts League of Community Health Centers, representing over 50 health centers statewide, a longtime civil rights and health equity advocate. He played key roles on Massachusetts COVID-19 health equity task force and vaccine working groups. Dr. Michael Curry also serves on the National NAACP Board of Directors and is the former president of the Boston branch. Put your hands together for Dr. Michael Curry.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm a child of Roxbury too. I was thinking about what remarks I might bring today, and I didn't want to write anything because I really wanted to listen to others and get a sense for what my spirit moved me to share. So one is, I'll tell you, I was a kid who grew up in Roxbury, and my mother moved here for the warmth of other suns from Birmingham. I want to tell you that when I was born here, she sent me to the Martin Luther King Middle School, where I learned my history. And I recall the language of Frederick Douglass. I recall the language of Carter G. Woodson. When Carter G. Woodson said to us, history is not the mere gathering of facts. The object of historical study is to arrive at a reasonable interpretation of the facts. As in this moment, they are now burning books and killing our history. We're now hiding words. So I'm going to ask you to do me a quick favor today. I'm going to ask you to pretend that you are not here today, but you were in this park in 1901. So I need you to close your eyes for a second. If my mother was here, she said, I ain't closing my eyes with all these people I don't know. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes because this park holds so much history. Because in this park in 1901, somebody might have been holding up a newspaper, the Boston Guardian, telling you, with all thy might, for every right. Repeat after me, with all thy might, every right. Every right. I want you to think about when you were sitting in this park in 1915, 10,000 black folks marched down the street to protest Birth of a Nation, the racist propaganda film that was playing at the Tremont Theater. I want you to be there. I think it's one thing to study history, it's another thing to be in history. To pretend that you were there and you knew what the sights and sounds and what movement was about. So I need you to imagine you were here in 1915. I want you to think about 1965. Think about the context of 1965 as you march down the street to get here today. I need you to think about we had just passed the Civil Rights Act just a few months before that. folks that fought and died to pass the Civil Rights Act. I need you to think about those months leading up to his visit here in Boston. The Selma, the Montgomery campaigns. I need you to know who James Reeb was, a white Unitarian Universalist minister who was killed when he answered Dr. King's call to come to Selma. I need you to know about the Montgomery campaign and those thousands who marched in Montgomery with Dr. King just days before he got here to Boston. I need you to understand why he came to Boston. Because as I get you to quantum leap through time and be in different parts of the history, there's a reason why I'm asking you to be somewhere else. Because there's a moment when you come back to Boston in 2025 and you now understand what your responsibility is. There's an obligation you have when you visited history that you have a role to play in defending our rights today. I have the honor and privilege of representing the National NAACP. I chair the National Board's Advocacy and Policy Committee. Before Donald Trump was elected, we were in crisis. If you're a black woman in this crowd, you have less chance of surviving breast cancer than white women. If you're a black woman in this crowd, you have less chances of surviving your pregnancy and not having adverse consequences in your pregnancy. If you're a black man, you are disparately impacted by stroke or prostate cancer. If you're a black woman, breast cancer. I need you to know we were dealing with a crisis way before he got elected. We were dealing with these policy issues way before the life expectancy. I sat with Dr. Ojikutu yesterday on a panel. That you can take a train 5 stops from Roxbury to where we stand now and live 23 years longer. Come on now. I need you to feel angry way before he got elected. Come on. Because now you got a responsibility. I always say to people, if not you, then who? If not now, then when? So I know we feel frustrated, angry, confused about this moment, and I got to put a footnote to this conversation. Black folks have felt like this for a long time. We've had to hide our words for a long time. We had to worry about whether we got fired or defunded for a long time. This ain't new for us. We've had to deal with many of you in this crowd right now are dealing with that feeling we've had to deal with a lifetime. So I'm going to challenge you all. Senator Markey had me stand with him a few weeks ago at his town hall in Malden. And I presented some remarks on the challenge we face under this administration, particularly in healthcare. And I remember as I got up to speak, the crowd received all of us, and someone came over to me right after I spoke, and she said, Michael, I feel like I'm leaving here and I don't know what to do. She said, I just feel like no one's told us what to do. I said, I'm gonna remind you of something Charles Hamilton Houston said when he won a case. One of those cases that led up to Brown v. Board. Charles Hamilton Houston reminded us, he said, you can win in the courts, superior courts, right? You can win up to the Supreme Court, but the real battle is in the hearts and minds of people. So right now, you had a role to play. You got a responsibility to play. That you got to do battle with ignorance. That means your auntie and them, your cousins, your grandparents, all those folks that voted a certain way and feel a certain way in this moment, you got to do battle with them, and you got to show up armed with history. You got to show up armed with the data. So I'm going to challenge you, and I want you to remember this from the movie The Help. The classic line from that movie is, courage will not skip this generation. That's right. Courage will not skip this generation. Thank you.
Dr. Michael Curry, thank you so much for your inspiring words and reminding us that courage will not skip this generation. Courage will not skip Boston, because we are moving forward. We are moving forward. We're going to move right on forward to our next speaker, by the way, together. Our next speaker is the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Commission on LGBTQ Youth, the nation's only independent state agency dedicated to LGBTQ youth advocacy. Shipley Brooks has contributed to policy development, including assisting in writing law enforcement guidelines for the Boston Police Department and training other various state agencies. She's also active in community organizing, which is so crucial and important. Also, as she serves as the chairwoman on the NAACP LGBTQ Youth Committee for New England. Please welcome Shipley Brooks.
Now, we ain't had church in about 10 minutes. It won't always be like this. The Lord will perfect that concerning me. Sooner or later, it's gonna turn in my favor. It's turning around for me. Yes. My name is Shipley Brooks, and I have the honor of bringing good trouble on behalf of LGBTQ community and our state here. Audre Lorde profoundly stated, "There is no hierarchy of oppression. As a Black queer leader in America, there is no way I can choose between my freedom as a Black woman and my freedom as a lesbian woman." In many ways, advocacy within the Black community echoes the struggles of 1965. Back then, figures like Bayard Rustin faced the daunting choice of which identity to champion in the fight for liberation. For Black individuals living at the intersection of Black and LGBTQ, we often find ourselves on the battlefield, standing alongside those who may seek to harm us. Whether it is our own people not being included because we are LGBTQ, or within the LGBTQ community because we are Black. Does this resonate? Our community, unfortunately, learned the tactic of our oppressors. Whiteness and white supremacy culture is not a racial assignment. It is a global pandemic. As Dr. Martin Luther King said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. I believe that our leader was thinking of Black people, but he was also thinking of his good friend Bayard Rustin, whose life serves as a reminder that true liberation does not start in the spotlight. It begins at the margins, with the voices that are too often silenced and identities that are frequently erased. Bayard Rustin didn't quit when the going got tough. He didn't back down when he was told that he wasn't respectable enough, straight enough, or safe enough. He organized anyway. He loved anyway. He built movements anyway. And we are the living benefit of both his and Dr. King's work. Let's be honest, as we've mentioned several times, these are not easy times. We are navigating a movement and backlash of fear. Anti-LGBTQ and anti-Black legislation is on the rise. Trans youth are being targeted. Black queer lives remain under threat. Books are being banned. Our history is being rewritten. And for many of us, it feels like the ground beneath us is shaking. I often say, if you free the most marginalized person in the room, you will free everyone else. So who is the most marginalized person in the room? It is our Black trans women whose life expectancy is 35 years old. It is our young Black queer youth being targeted not only by our government, but also the systemic forces such as the carceral system, the healthcare institutions, our communities, our schools, and the child welfare system, and yes, our religious organizations. Centering the issues of our most marginalized means prioritizing all of our needs and legislation and policy and education and community decision making. Nothing about us without us, and I mean all of us. This is the essence of our movement, and this is why we are here. We cannot be the allies who have failed us in the past, those who hitch their agendas to our identities only to abandon us when it suits them. Liberation does not happen in silos. We have a responsibility to our people to make certain that liberation is holistic, to stand 10 toes down for our people. If ever righteously televised, we want all people to see that the revolution was led by all of us, on behalf of all of us, because none of us are free until all of us are free. So today, as we honor the power of our legacy, not just with remembrance, but with recommitment, we want to fight harder, to speak louder, to love one another out loud, to hold each other closer, and to never ever get weary in well-doing, because the margins are watching and they are counting on us to move. Let's get to work. Thank you.
Love one another out loud. That is how we are going to move forward. Next up is the President and CEO of the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts, leading efforts to advance racial and economic equity. Rashawn D. Hall is a former director of the ACLU of Massachusetts and assistant district attorney. Hall is also an ordained minister and long-standing advocate for civil rights, criminal justice reform, and community empowerment. Please welcome Rashawn Hall.
What's up, Boston? What's up, Massachusetts? So my name is actually Rashawn. So I stand here today in a long legacy of civil rights activists and freedom fighters who have been trying to move an agenda forward. I'm reminded of the Reverend Earl Wesley Lawson. I'm reminded of Mel King. I am reminded of and have the privilege to sit and look at and say happy birthday to Sister Charlotte Nelson. I am reminded of an Urban League Guild member who is with us here today, Wayne Lucas, who 65 years ago, or 60 years ago, marched and stood in this very place. Standing in the legacy of a civil rights organization that at the turn of the century, when black people were facing racial violence and oppression in the South, moved to northern cities to find racial violence and oppression in these same northern cities. Dr. King, 60 years ago, came here and spoke about those same northern ghettos that he saw when he was a seminary student here at Boston University, and where he became a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. 06. We are here as the future America that Dr. King spoke of when he spoke here. He mentioned that he was speaking of a future America where the society that does not tend to the needs of the least of these was a society that soul would die. See, the brilliance of Dr. King was his ability to take religious concepts like love and justice and the destiny of the soul and translate them into tangible concepts for the secular struggle for freedom. And continuing in that tradition, I am reminded of the hymn, "A Charge to Keep I Have," a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save and fitted for the sky, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my master's will. And that will is to save the soul of a nation that seems to be dying, fighting against racism and fascism that is dressed up as meritocracy and government efficiency with the niceties of confusion. That will is to lend to the needs of the least of these, particularly those who feel the modern segregation of a criminal record, who are overwhelmingly black and brown people. Let's make sure they have a clean slate and get those records sealed. This will is one that is to commemorate the efforts to encourage this city and this nation to be better, like Ron Bell did 20 years ago, and like we're doing today, and like the generations will come and do, just like the future America that Dr. King spoke of. That will is to defend democracy, to demand diversity, to defeat poverty. And so we do that through same-day voter registration to get more people engaged in the electoral process, through ranked choice voting to make sure we're selecting the candidates that we like, to make sure that we have proper representation in government, in the private sector, in the education sector, that people can have financial, equitable well-being. That will is to make Boston and Massachusetts a beacon on the hill for the rest of the nation to look forward to as an example of that ever-elusive American dream and the promise of freedom. That will is that we move forward together. That will is that we move forward together. That will is that we move forward together. Thank you. So now I have the privilege and honor to introduce the next speaker. And so in the spirit of honoring our ancestors and those who came before us, I'm honored to introduce a very special guest, a Harvard-trained attorney, a youth advocate, and daughter of NBA and civil rights legend Bill Russell. Karen Kenyatta Russell has carried forward her father's legacy through her work in mentorship, justice, and civic engagement. She is a co-founded mentor, helped secure her father's Presidential Medal of Freedom, and created Russell's Rules for Resistance, a program on purpose and activism. Please join me in welcoming and giving a warm round of applause to Karen Kenyatta Russell.
Daughter of Bill Russell and the proud daughter of Rose Swisher. She was a poet, a feminist, and a Black Panther. I am going to talk a little bit about my family's connection with the Kings, my family's relationship with Boston, which is a little rocky, and finally, some of the lessons I've learned from my parents about finding joy in chaos, because my parents were joyous activists. So, on the March on Washington, my father ran into Dr. King in the lobby of the Willard Hotel, and Dr. King said, "We want you to come on stage." And Bill Russell was so humble that he declined. And I think that says a lot about him. Also, my father wrote a book with Taylor Branch, who is best known for writing the Martin Luther King trilogy. It took him 30 years. Now, Taylor describes himself as a southern, red-headed, freckled guy with a drawl who burns easily in the sun and didn't think he was necessarily the right person for the job. But Daddy was a climb and pull person and introduced him to Mrs. King, and now we have those amazing books. It's very wonderful. So, I'm not as humble as my dad because I agreed to come speak here. And one of the reasons I came to speak here is when I was doing research for the statue, I learned that there was a sit-in in Boston Common. As my dad described it, they wanted to raise Roxbury. He said urban renewal was Negro removal. And so every day at a certain point, food would appear. Did you know that my dad catered the protest from Bill Russell's slaves? And so when they said, we have 6 Black restaurants who are catering, I'm like, I'm in. I'm here for the food. So, I want to tell something about my family's relationship with Boston. Many of you might know that there's currently a documentary on HBO Sports called Celtic City. And the other night I was watching it, and they asked Red Auerbach, why did Bill Russell repair his relationship with Boston? And to my surprise and delight, Red said it was the power of his daughter. And I want to tell you why there was that rockiness. One of the stories is they broke into my family home. They spray painted slurs on the wall. They broke all of Daddy's trophies. And if you think about it, that's a lot of work. And they smashed my mother's perfume. And when my parents went to get in bed, they pulled back the sheets and someone had defecated in their bed. And that is how Boston treated my father. And I think it's a particular reason why I was triggered by J6, you know, the feet up on Nancy Pelosi's chair, spreading feces, and I still want to know what happened to Ayanna Pressley's panic button. So, my parents, despite all of this, always were filled with laughter. And I'll tell you one funny story about my dad. He rented a house on Main Street in Reading, and he was mowing the lawn. And this gentleman came up and rolled down the window and said, "Boy, how much do you charge to mow the lawn?" And my dad said, "You know what? They don't pay me. They let me sleep with the woman who lives here." And the guy drove off. Very Russell. So I know that I need to wind up, but I want you to know that this chaos is to deny us joy, and I am not going to let them steal my joy. My parents were joyful voters, and I remember when I was volunteering on Kamala's campaign, they were joking about her cackle. Well, you know what? Bill Russell won 11 championships and 13 years, 8 straight, 2 as player coach, and he cackled. So we are gonna cackle into resistance. Thank you very much, Boston, and I'm glad that Boston, I was able to help repair our family's relationship with Boston. Thank you.
One more time for Ms. Karen Kenyatta Russell, ladies and gentlemen. And as she mentioned, we do have several Black-owned restaurants here in Boston. Estella, we've got Hugh, Rock City Pizza, Everybody Gotta Eat, which is one of my personal faves, and also Rhythm and Raps too. One round of applause for all of our vendors here today. To help me welcome our next guest of honor, please welcome former Emerson College president and longtime advocate for education and civic change, president and CEO of the Boston Foundation, Dr. Lee Helton.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming out today. You know, our instructions were to speak for only 3 minutes. I knew that wasn't going to work. It's an honor to be here with you in community as we celebrate the 60th anniversary of the 1965 Freedom Rally led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. By being here and by being together, we're also living into his legacy and heeding his call for Boston to be a testing ground for the ideals of freedom. That call, as we all know, is as resonant today as it was on April 23rd in 1965, when Dr. King stood in this same place to address a crowd that was described as determined and resolute. And as part of his speech that day, he declared that now is the time to make real the promise of democracy. Now is the time. And fast forward 60 years, and here we are, together again, once again determined and resolute. And with his words that ring true then and true now, a reminder that now, as it was then, the time to make democracy a promise, the time to make democracy a social contract for our citizens, and a central tenet of what we could truly be at its very best. You know, King was born in a world where white businesses created separate accommodations for black folks. A society supported and legalized by the laws of the land that forced African Americans to pay the same or more for less. A society of separate parks, a society of separate hospitals, of separate public transportation, of separate water fountains, separate public restrooms, separate libraries, separate hotels, separate restaurants, separate theaters, and separate schools. And even separate cemeteries were common in King's America, not only in the South, but in the North as well. And King's brilliance was to develop a strategy, at times rhetorical, at other times confrontational, that would awaken the nation to the evils of racism and poverty. And like all great leaders, he was able to communicate a compelling vision of the American narrative, not so much of what it is or it was, but more profoundly by what it could be. And here we are again, living in the shadow of a mean-spirited government who seeks to compound its assault on the rights and freedoms of our democratic values, who seeks to erase our cherished and hard-fought cultural, social, and even human identities, while starving vulnerable communities of resources that sustain life and well-being. And in the face of these assaults, we are called to action. We are called to action, folks, to redouble our efforts to not only advance equity and justice, but to protect and sustain them. So this is not a time to rest. This is the time to be restless and to be relentless, to renew and amplify our collective ennobling work, which is so very important now and into the future. And undergirding our work must be everybody, a desire to serve others and the unshakable belief that our common humanity does not divide us, but rather binds us together in hope and promise, no matter our country of origin, our race, our ethnicity, our wealth, our gender, or our sexual identity. History requires that we stand for something. The dead requires it as well, for both history and the dead will judge us by our actions, how we answer as a nation, as individuals, the question, how will I live my life? And we live in a world in which paltriness of aim will simply not do. So I remind you and implore you to remain faithful and full of hope, to continue the good work that you already do. We cannot be silent. And I challenge you to lift up your sweet and strong voices, especially right now, where you work, wherever you play, lift up your hands of hope, your hands of faith, for history instructs us that this nation, when it meets its challenges head on, with honesty, with integrity, and a commitment to doing what was right, we will, as King reminded us, we will come together again, we will work together again, we will pray together again, we will hope together again, we will reach the other side together, and we will stand united as one nation with the hope that we can set the table for all to enjoy life's bounty, and that our nation's motto, E pluribus unum, one out of the many, may become a living creed. So King's legacy lives on in all of us, and it most definitely lives on in our next featured speaker, whom I am so pleased to introduce. Martin Luther King III is the firstborn son of the late Martin and Coretta, who, by the way, she lived when she was a student at the New England Conservatory, not far from here, on the other side of the Common on Spruce Street. They were a couple whose love story began in Boston and whose love and powerful presence in Boston is forever memorialized just several feet from here in the embrace sculpture created by the artist Hank Willis Thomas. Martin Luther King III has devoted his entire life to shepherding and building upon his parents' legacy, and his presence here connects that legacy with today's urgent fight for justice, for equity, and for collective power. With his wife and his daughter, The King family continues to dedicate their life work to social progress and widespread healing of our nation and our world. And so please, with me, would you give a warm Boston welcome to Martin Luther King III.
Good afternoon, Boston. I am so honored to, and I thank God for being able to be here today as we observe the 60th year of the march that my father and leadership of Boston led 60 years ago. Mayor Wu, I know it's your congresswoman, but my congresswoman too, Presley, to each and every elected official here, to all religious and spiritual leaders here. Got to say something special about Dr. Amari Parrish Jeffers and the committee that actually worked so diligently to have the monument erected not far from here, the Embrace Monument. And I know I'm missing someone. You know, it's important to speak to our most precious resource, our children. Our children, because a nation is judged by how it treats its most precious resource. And I would imagine that if those from another planet that existed came and looked at what we are doing as a nation and how we are treating our most precious resource, they would probably say we are not doing a good enough job. We must and we can do better. Let me also say to Karen Kenyatta Russell, it's so good to be with and see you again. And I'm going to be through in just a few minutes. We don't need a lot of time. We know what our mission is, I believe. Right. But my dad would say, somehow we have to hew out of a mountain of despair a stone of hope. And particularly in this time, because I would have thought that by the time I was 67 years old, that racism would be gone, buried, not that racism would be coming back. Therefore, we must quadruple our efforts to create a more just and humane society. We used to exhibit humanity and civility, but we have chosen temporarily to allow civility to be moved aside. And that is not sustainable, my friends. My father taught us about nonviolence, one of the greatest proponents, and I should say my mother, of nonviolence. And certainly I owe a great debt of gratitude to this city, because had they not met here in Boston, I perhaps would be here. So I am so grateful for the love story that came together in this city. And I derived something special, energetically. You know, everything is about energy. And today, we've got to find a way to move forward when everything appears to be being dismantled. It seems to be attempting to break things up. Now, you do have to retreat sometimes, but Dad showed us how to stay on the battlefield, and Mom, throughout their lives. They showed us how to build community. My father's last book was entitled, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? We've seen chaos for quite a few years now. But out of that chaos must come community that is sustainable. Because in the United States of America, everyone deserves a decent home. Now, let me explain that. A decent home could be the circumference of where I'm standing now. Have we seen tiny homes being erected all across this country? I mean, in a nation of over 300 million, and a nation with a $20+5 trillion economy, something is dramatically wrong. Come on, preach. Wealth is in the hands of just a few. And when I say a decent home, by the way, as I said, I'm talking about, it doesn't have to be a 5,000 square foot home. If you're able to do that, that's great. But everybody in the United States of America ought to have health care. Not some, but everyone. Everyone in America ought to have the best education, not some schools performing and others not. Everyone should have a decent job, and everyone deserves justice. We have a criminal system, not a criminal justice system. You go down to the courthouse today, no matter what city you're in. Richard Pryor used to say this, looking for justice and all you'll find is just us. Jails full of people. I'm not saying we don't need jails, but we need a system that is representative, more indigent defense attorneys, so that all people can achieve justice, not just some. I think my father and mother would challenge us to be a better America, because we can become that. It starts with something called love. And it's not, Dad talked about a number of loves. I won't talk about them today, but I'll talk about the highest level of love. It's agape love. It's a love that is totally unselfish and seeks nothing in return. You love someone if they're old or young, black or white, Native American or Hispanic and Latino American, African or Asian. You love them because you know that God loves you, and that's the kind of love we got to embrace to change this system right now. So I want to urge you, 60 years has passed. We don't have the luxury of stopping. We don't have the luxury of giving in or giving out. We have to keep moving forward until that dream that Dad shared becomes real for all humankind. It's a dream of freedom and justice and equality for all humankind, not just some. You know, we're so much better than we are behaving today. So what do? We challenge leadership. We have to challenge this president. Doesn't seem to be challengeable, some may say. But if you don't stand up and engage, you'll fall for anything. And I'm not here to talk about one person. because it really is a collective.
Come on now.
One person can present dangerous options, but someone else can come and collectively we can create positive energy, because everything is energy in this universe. How we choose to show up and show out. And when we say demonstration, we're not talking about a violent demonstration. Dad advocated for nonviolence. And that's what he represented every day. Although, as I get ready to close, I want to share one thing. This is 57 years, by the way, since my father's assassination. Every Sunday, every time he traveled, and when he preached on Sundays, he would call his secretary on Thursday or Friday and share with her what his sermon was going to be on that Sunday. So he was killed on April 4th for Thursday. So April 7th, he would have, this sermon he would have preached. He told her, he said, I'm going to be preaching a message. And this may be, it certainly will be interesting to some of you, but you have to understand the context. The name of that sermon was going to be America May Go to Hell. Now, that's revolutionary because you say, oh, that's bad. No, he was not a negative person. He always challenged us to become the best. And he showed up providing that example. And I guess what I'm saying is if we don't have a course correction, and a course correction soon, we may end up going to hell. That's not what I want. That's not what I'm going to accept. But I want us to think about that. Think about how do we show up the best we can be each and every day. How do we show up no matter what we do? Everybody can do a little bit. I visited my mom's undergraduate institution called Antioch College. And actually, let me say one more thing before I say that. You know, I come out of a family, I'm not a preacher, but I come out of a family of preachers. And they're always attempting to close. I'm getting ready to close. Got one more thing to say. Something popped in my head I needed to say. You know, I want to understand what's wrong with my nation when we mistreat veterans. Cutting money from veteran services. What's wrong with our nation when we mistreat seniors?
Come on now.
What's wrong with our nation when we mistreat our children? Now, we have an immigration problem. But we have gone across this nation and gone into schools and churches and intercepted families and telling people to go back or go somewhere, when we don't even acknowledge the fact that every last one of us came from somewhere else. How hypocritical can we be? The only group of people that have the right to operate a little differently are those that we mistreat the worst. That's called our indigenous or Native American citizens. Again, what kind of nation do we have? We have got to reclaim our humanity. And that means standing up together. So I go back to Antioch College, which is where my mom took me. And on that college was a statue of the educator Horace Mann. And under that statue was an inscription that said, "Be ashamed to die until you won a victory for humanity." I said, I was 14. I went back about 5 times with my mom. And finally I figured out how to interpret that because it's so powerful. Be ashamed to die until you've won a victory for humanity. Well, how do you do that? You see, we can win victories in our neighborhood. We can win victories in our schools. We can win victories in our places of worship. Some of us may win victories in our city, some in our state. Some may win victories for our nation, and others still yet may win victories for our world. All those words mean are be ashamed to die until you've done a little something to make the world in which we all must live a little better than it was when you arrived. So let's get to work. Thank you, and may God bless you, Bostonians, always.
Let's give one more Boston round of applause for Mr. King. One more Boston round of applause for Mr. King, ladies and gentlemen. And I know that we talked about this at the top of the program. A little bit of rain ain't hurt nobody, because we know 60 years ago that our ancestors were doing a whole lot more and a whole lot more. All right, we're almost done. I do want to take the moment to just get a pulse check. How's everybody doing today? Which way are we going to go? We're going to go forward? Yeah. We're going to go forward? Yeah. Before our final call to action, we're going to bring up 4 incredible voices that are shaping our future. We know that artists, of course, play an essential role in a healthy democracy. Beat the Odds is a nonprofit serving under-resourced youth in Boston. That's right, give them a large round of applause. Through its creative youth development program using music and the arts for promoting health, self-awareness, and mental health as well. Up next, there was a powerful response to the question, what does America mean to you? Let's give it up one more time for Beat the Odds.
Yeah, what it is. Yo, get some peace in life. Only chance I get to see is when a brother rests in peace from life. The all-seeing eye of this bald eagle type. But we red-tailed hawks when we speak they hide. Try to use our voice to spread they lies. So we raise much noise and raise up signs that claim gang affiliation. Keep our voice inside. What they tell us, but I'm yelling, I got too much pride. For what we built here while they sat on the side and benefited from the fact that we had to survive. And we still surviving, but we still gon' thrive. Thought there ain't no hiding, can no longer deny that this ain't about black, brown, yellow, or white. It ain't about blue, red, or the left and the right. It's what our leaders are defeated, so we won't realize. It's the green, brother, green be our biggest survive. Hey, land of the free, built by the slaves. Trouble in the waters, hey, wade in the raid. The black and the berry, the sweet and the juice. 3 Ks in America, came with the news. It's the aftertaste of the strangest fruit. The revolution will be televised, made in the USA. For us, by us only, homie. Home of the brave, the caged, and the police. But we all getting paid now. Treat the rich while the poor get in. It's a war going on outside we ain't safe from. It is viewed by your pay stub. Well, you know money make the world go round. And this is America where dreams are made up.
Bodies aching, feeling nauseous. Cause body bags that I see. Okay. Body in my sources. In the red, blue, and just.
Okay. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Off of the prophets, we trying to make violence. In the ghetto, whale watching, I'm boosting the lights. My mama need a kidney insurance, ain't got it. Force one drops, right of her body be acting. Masses don't care about this hair, baby. Napoleon till they never kiss, little baby. Democracy, let's vote for peace. Guarantees that the money trees cover every little baby. Damn, who's crazy? Damn, who's crazy? The test bus skipping over screens when the clay waiting those seeking liberty. The kids at the borders line just for freedom me. A brother got 3 jobs on the Wednesday. What a billionaires buy countries. While the First Nations giving portions of their own land, call them savages. Don't you hear the irony? I'll say they names. Vietnam blend, right? Iraq burn, right? Afghanistan, they hit a bad nerve. Hawaii, 1 bananas for the brain. Puerto Rico was a scene, and for Haiti, no, it's deep hurt. In the Philippines, president was picked by the CIA. America just not democracy, huh? From the Middle East to the Argentine to the Caribbean, law, freedom! Who you really kidding? History got ID, America a village. 2 centuries, and we still shackled by the vision. Seen the destiny, manifest. I'm gonna say my kid like, whoa, land of the free. Built by the slaves. Troubles in the waters. Wade in the rain. Lost in the liberation. He's a murderer. I said, lost in the put your fist up. Put your fist up. raised high.
While singing these songs of freedom and faith. Set me free from these chains.
Okay.
Nobody can contain.
Hey, nobody.
Feel of corruption. My body being displaced. Torn with the conflict. Reality is pain. The lies are wearing off. Hope's making you see. Set me free from these chains. So I tried so hard.
I tried
so hard.
I tried
to fight my fears. End of the road for us.
One more time, we told you the revolution will be televised in the land of the free, built by the slaves, troubling the waters, waiting, land of the free, built by the slaves, come on, troubling the waters, they waiting, we go by PTO Boston. Thank you, BTO. Thank you, Embrace Boston. Thank you, all the beautiful people in the crowd for enjoying being a part of this revolution with us. I go by the name Joe Sazza. I go by the name Sonye. I go by PTO Bass.
I'm Nemo.
Hello. Thank you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Imari Paris Jeffries from Embrace Boston. I'm so honored and humbled to be a part of this day with all of you today. We are going to close out with a call of action, and I want to do a couple of quick shout outs before we leave here today. I want to shout out Shamel Idiokidis, if he's in the audience, for being the inspiration to remind us to remember the day. I want us to remember that tomorrow is Coretta Scott King's birthday, so let us honor her tomorrow and think about that holiday. Also, one of the honorees of the 1965 Freedom Plaza, Charlotte Nelson, who's sitting right there in the front with an umbrella hiding, it's her birthday. I want to also shout out the other honorees of the 1965 Freedom Plaza, Mr. Barry Gaither, who's standing right there with the hat on looking handsome, Dr. Gaither, and Mr. Jose Masso looking handsome over there with this hat. And all of the other family and ancestors of the other honorees of the 1965 Freedom Plaza. And so if you're able to, there should be a small card in your hand. If you're able to, please stand as we recite this pledge to each other. And with permission, place your hand on someone next to you who you know as we say this pledge together. With permission, don't be touching people you don't know. And this is a call and response. So the speaker is going to introduce themselves, say the words, and then you will repeat after them.
Hi everyone, Ru Tu Weizhen, President of the Boston City Council. So I will say the first paragraph and you'll repeat it and that's what everyone will do. Okay. So to honor this collective promise, I pledge to remain steadfast until true justice, genuine and inclusive, is fully realized.
Reverend Jeffrey Brown, co-founder and board co-chair of Embrace Boston, I pledge to stand in solidarity, embracing and supporting all efforts pursued with integrity and grounded in our enduring democratic traditions of nonviolent protest, peaceful assembly, respectful petitioning, and persistent advocacy within our courts and legislators all together. I pledge to stand in solidarity
My name is Tito Jackson, and I'm co-chair of the Embrace Board. And I do have to give a shout out to New England Audio, who is the reason why you can actually hear me today. A black-owned audio company in the city of Boston. And they gave me the longest paragraph, y'all. So we're gonna break this one down a little bit, okay? I pledge to honor the spirit and carry forward the message of the 1965 Freedom Rally to my community. Let me hear you.
I pledge to honor the spirit and carry forward the message of the 1965
To my neighbors, friends, and colleagues, mobilizing us all towards shared purpose and united action. I will march, advocate, volunteer, educate, and vote. I am committed to ensuring our collective voices strong, clear, and resolute. Echo powerfully across our city, throughout our Commonwealth and beyond.
Good afternoon. My name is Lori Nelson. I stand as the Senior Advisor for Racial Justice for the City of Boston, but most importantly, as the proud daughter of the honoree, Miss Charlotte Nelson, my mother. Happy birthday again, and God bless you. The last paragraph reads, with deep reverence and unwavering purpose, I pledge my heart, my mind, and my spirit to achieving enduring social peace through meaningful social justice, forever guided by the courageous souls we honor today. Everybody all together. With deep reverence and unwavering purpose, I pledge my heart, my mind, and my spirit to achieving enduring social peace through meaningful social justice, forever guided by the courageous souls we honor today.
Thank you all. Enjoy the day with peace and love.